Wow, that was almost a productive week. Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to me doing the thing I always do on Monday, which is day drinking and, weekly navel-gazing, when I talk about all the books I read last week, and all the videos I made last week, and all the books I plan to read this week, and videos I maybe vaguely think about making this week, and then it kind of depends what happens after that. So, what did I do, and what did I read? Let's start with the reading, and I did read quite a bit. Turns out you actually get shit done when you're not at a festival. What did I read? I did read Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle. It's fun. It maybe wasn't as fun, or it maybe didn't work as well for me as did Bury Your Gaze last year, but it's still a very, very good book, and I have thoughts on it, so there's that. And then I did read The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, which is one of those classics of like nonfiction and, looking at current forms of neoliberal capitalism that I've wanted to read for a long, long time. And I just, went and did it. Awesome, right? So I did that. Important book. You should definitely read it if you haven't read it yet. It is very, very good. And will make you hate Milton Friedman even more, which is a good thing, to be clear. And then, because I was, already on that sort of like trajectory, I did reread Globalists and Crack Up Capitalism and Hayek's Bastards by Quinn Slobodian, those being 3 books about the trajectory of certain aspects of the neoliberal movement, all the way from Hayek and Mises and their sort of like origin story from the end of the Habsburg Austro-Hungarian Empire all the way to where we are now with right-wing libertarians and Nazis and all of that kind of stuff. All 3 books are really good if you're interested in, history of economics and stuff like that. Obviously, Crack Up Capitalism and Hayek's Bastards are more directly concerned with things that are happening right now, with ideas like charter cities, all of that kind of stuff, seasteading, all the weird shit that tech Nazis like Peter Thiel get up to, and obviously Hayek's Bastards looking at Murray Rothbard, Charles Murray, the AfD, and in Germany, for example, like these sort of right-wing parties and their obsession with gold and other stuff. So really important books. Globalists is much more a larger history of the beginnings and the origins of the neoliberal sort of like movement around the Mont Pelerin society and stuff like that. Really interesting, important stuff, and I decided to reread them because, you can't read books too many times, especially when it comes to like nonfiction stuff like this. I did that. And then I did, in fact, read more. Yes, I did read for the first time Islands in the Net by Bruce Sterling, which is one of those classics of cyberpunk that I've been aware of for like ages now, but I've never read it. I've only read one book by Bruce Sterling before, that is The Difference Engine. That's something he wrote together with William Gibson, the other big name in cyberpunk, and that's a steampunk book about Charles Babbage and it's called The Difference Engine. Well, what do you expect, right? And so it was fun reading Islands in the Net. I learned a lot, not necessarily learned a lot, but I think there's some interesting things going on in Islands in the Net that work really well for now. Bruce Sterling famously being another one of those people that, with their look at cyberpunk, certainly painted images that have an eerie similarity to parts of the world that we find ourselves in these days. So yeah, good book. It's also in some ways an incredibly 1980s kind of book in other ways. So there's that as well. So I did really, really enjoy, in that regard, Islands in the Net, and I highly recommend you read it if you are interested in the history of cyberpunk. I can't promise that you will love it or anything, but, interesting book in that regard. Also, one of the really fascinating bits, and I'm just going to mention it here, is like one of the things in Islands in the Net is that like the main character and the main hero or heroine in this case is a woman, and at the beginning of the story she is married and has a kid, and throughout the story it's her husband who takes care of the kid while she runs off and does adventure shit. And I just found that really interesting in like a 1980s book to have this sort of like labor division in a sci-fi book in a world that, especially when it comes to sci-fi, is still very often sort of like focused on very clear traditional old school gender roles of the man going off and doing adventure stuff and the woman waiting for him at home. And so having that, switched around in a very natural way. It's not like even pointed out or anything. I was just like, hey, this is actually really cool. I just found that very interesting. So yeah, Islands in the Net by Bruce Sterling. And then I did read the first collected tales of Beauchelane and Coble Broach, and the second collected tales of Beauchelane and Coble Broach, both by Stephen Erickson. Beauchelane and Coble Broach famously being a couple of necromancers that show up from time to time in all over the world and cause a lot of mayhem and chaos. They are famously characters in Memories of Ice for a bit, and they show up in Orb Scepter Throne by in Cam Asselmont as well. And for the longest time, I did not have access to them, to those books. Then they were finally released in audiobook format, but obviously they were region locked to the US for all kinds of weird reasons. And I have finally had access to these books, so it was time to read them and slowly move back toward the Malazan world because in a month or a bit over a month. Not 2 months, I guess. Roughly 2 months. The next Book of Witness, the second Book of Witness, will come out, No Life Forsaken. And so it's probably a good idea to slowly reacquaint myself with the Malazan world, and it was fun. Those being, sort of like short stories or novellas, I guess is probably the correct term here. They are, they vary in quality and tone in a lot of ways. So there's that. I did enjoy some of them more than others. I think one of them in particular, that being Crackpot Trail, certainly reminded me a lot of like Clark Ashton Smith. And as you may or may not know, I do really love Clark Ashton Smith. So that was fun in general. And at some point in the future, I will definitely make videos about all of these books, these stories as well. Because, I've made videos about everything else Malazan so far, so it's just fair to do that as well in that regard. So will happen in the future, but yeah, I enjoyed that. So that's what I read last week, which is quite a bit, isn't it? So the question is, what am I going to read this week? And I don't know. Frankly, I don't know. I will obviously do some rereading and stuff of books around the artificial intelligence thing, because that video is still going to happen. So there will be more nonfiction reading in that regard. Beyond that, when it comes to fiction, I am somewhat at a loss what to do next, what to read next. If you have suggestions, you can always put them down in the comments, and maybe I'll do that. Maybe I just need someone to, trigger a memory that goes like, oh, right, I wanted to read that for a long time, and then I go and do that. There is that distinct possibility. We will find out. But yeah, beyond that, like one of the books I'm definitely going to read this week is Rebooting AI by Gary Marcus and that other guy. It's from like 2019. It's once again like a book of about artificial intelligence. Gary Marcus famously being a professor for neurolinguistics, I think mostly, or neuropsychology, and he has worked on artificial intelligence stuff first for Uber and then for his own company and so forth. So he's definitely someone who is involved in the development of artificial intelligence. He's not a big fan of the approach of OpenAI, so it's interesting to read his sort of like take on artificial intelligence and responsible development of artificial intelligence. In that regard, I feel it might be a final sort of like piece of information that might actually impact that larger artificial intelligence video that I'm probably working on. So that's definitely something that will happen. Beyond that, I don't know. We'll find out. Isn't that fun? All right, so what about videos? Well, I did make videos this week, last week, which is a lot of them, actually. So I finally made that video, made a video and re-recorded the video that I first made the week before about, the whole idea that there is a male reading crisis. I made that video. I'm pretty happy with the result. I'm very happy with the thumbnail results. I did, in fact, go and take pictures with that sword in the August heat to have like that bit there. So I was very happy with that. I hope the video, made some people think. I certainly got like a couple of comments, which is always good. It did actually get some more views than many of my favorite videos of late did, which, it's kind of sad that only the drama stuff kind of gets good numbers, but here we are. So I did that. And then I did, out of the blue, Britain over at Samoki Dude tagged me with the My Reading Philosophy tag, and I did that, and I had fun with that. So sometimes, tags are easy for me because, you just come up with the answers and you just make that video. It doesn't take a lot of preparation and hard thinking or anything of the sorts, and I try to usually, depending on the questions, I try to not overthink those and just do that on the spot. So having that opportunity worked really well, and I'm like, I guess I'll make a second video, and that was cool. And then I did the stream on Saturday, and I had fun with that. That was a very spontaneous one. It was not, planned to be the official monthly Marxist malcontent video stream, but what with me not being at a festival or anything of the sorts, I was like, it's Saturday and I'm kind of bored. Maybe let's do a live stream, and I had fun with that. I hope so did you. I certainly enjoyed it. And during that stream, I did talk a bit about the whole problems with Audible and how Audible is paying or not paying authors and stuff like that. And then yesterday I was thinking about maybe I should actually turn that into its own video, because not everyone has sort of the patience, time, and interest to go through 3 hours of live stream to find a 10-minute sort of rant about Audible and stuff. And so I sat down and did record that as well, and uploaded it last night, and it's out there now, where I talk about why leaving Audible and going to Spotify, because it might currently pay authors slightly better than Audible is, how that is not exactly going to be a good idea, or at least doesn't make a lot of sense from my perspective. I hope, that adding that sort of making that not, explicit in a way is a good thing, and hopefully some of you find that interesting or feel like commenting and all of that kind of stuff. So 3 videos, 1 live stream, and then I also was on Britain's live stream last night, the Sunday stream that Britain does from time to time over at Samoki Dude. It's Britain's social club now, which I really like, and really enjoyed that. Hanging out with Britain's always fun, and I think some of you also watched that, so that's cool. So that's all I did. Or is it? Yes, I did also record the first part, or re-record the first part of the artificial intelligence video. I am actively working on it. So that's all I did last week. So a lot. What about videos this week? Well, ideally, I'll make a video for Lucky Day by Chuck Tingle, because I have thoughts about that book, and I'm definitely going to bring them, put them into a video. So that's hopefully coming out sometime this week. And at the same time, I'll continue working on the artificial intelligence video, and hopefully, we'll see how far I get with it. And that's something I've learned, I say that every single time. When I have one of these large projects, I usually sort of need to start recording it, then realize that I'm packing way too much into way too short a time, and then I need to step back and go you know what, actually, it will be good for the structure if I make it even longer, because then that allows me to go into some more detail. And but apparently I need to learn that lesson every single time, but I think I've learned it now, and I feel that the structure is now slightly better. So this works. In this case, I realized that I needed to sort of stretch out the part about the history of artificial intelligence research, and look at how the current sort of large language model stuff works. Need to sort of spread that out into 2 parts and not just 1 part, because otherwise it's too much information in too short a time. And there is a difference between current AI technology and the larger sort of history of the field, so to speak. And picking those 2 things apart, I hope, will make the whole clearer. So that's where we are, and in that regard. And I think I've been thinking about that for a bit now in general, because it's the same thing I've had with the video about, the male reading crisis problem, right? I had the same thing, and I feel it's a problem that I wrestle with a lot. And I think it comes from having read a lot. The more you read, the more things connect, right? And it's very easy to then sort of make argumentative leaps in an argument from point A to point B and leave out vital steps, because they're so self-evident, at least for me, in my brain. So I sometimes, and then I put in too many things at the same time because it all connects in my mind. And then I need to actively step back and go like, well, but I'm making this video for other people that have not, hopefully, probably not read all the same things I have read. So I need to be actually, more explicit and take people through an argument like step by step by step, and possibly explain context that, that's kind of the thing that I'm sometimes wrestling with, like making these things slower and more explicit, because otherwise it becomes very impenetrable for people that have not read the same things as me, or at least similar things to me, and have like a similar background to me. And that is something that I'm generally struggling with, and I'm trying to tie this together. See, like I also often wrestle with the question, and I had that with the Audible things, like, do I need to make a video about this because other people have made videos about it and other people have made similar points to me? And I realized that mindset, I don't know where that comes from, possibly partly from like university and academia, where you try not to say the same thing as someone else is saying. But this is not academia. We're doing YouTube, and the fact that someone else has made the same argument as I have does not prevent me from making the same argument or doing a video about the same topic, because A, I'll use my words for it, which may be slightly different. B, there are people who watch my channel that don't necessarily watch the same channels as I do, may not be aware of someone else having made the same argument. So saying something, again, in my own words, does ideally spread that idea wider. And if I stand behind certain ideas and want to make videos about certain things, then having more people hear those is generally a good thing, right? So having those two things, and maybe me explaining it in my words, makes some people go, oh, right, when they did not understand it when someone else did. And that goes obviously both directions. Maybe I'll make a point about something, and you get away from that video and go like, I have no idea what he's going on about there. And then you watch someone else say sort of like the same thing, but in their own words, and go like, oh, right, that's it. So having more content on the same topic is actually a good thing about YouTube or social media. And I sometimes need to remind myself of that fact. And that's something that I feel ties into the same thing as going like, well, maybe I need to slow down and have like a more detailed explanation of something, because that makes it hopefully more accessible to other people. And the goal here is to be as accessible as possible, right? I mean, I've spoken about that with like the anti-intellectualism video and things like that in the past. The goal here is to present information, to present my view of the world, of course, in a lot of ways, like to allow people, that is, hopefully, to watch my videos and learn something that you might otherwise have not known. And sometimes that's me presenting things I learned in university by reading books and so forth, and having a specific kind of education and educational background that not everyone has. Like, not everyone can go to university. Not everyone can study computer science, philosophy, and history at university. Those are privileges. And they come with money. They come like we being in a situation in a country where that specific kind of education is around. Studying history or philosophy in Germany is a very, very different experience from studying history or philosophy, say, in the United States. Continental philosophy is very different from analytic philosophy, which is kind of the thing that happens a lot, that is more centered in the US, for example. So having that specific background, I feel it is helpful if I make this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, because hopefully that will, allow you to, know more. And knowing more makes the world a better place, because it allows you to make choices, to make decisions more informed in a lot of ways. Am I a good educator? Probably not. Am I a good science communicator? Probably not. But every little helps. And that's kind of why I think I sometimes need to sort of remind myself that, like, going out there and doing something that someone else has already done is in fact probably a good thing in one way or another. And it seems to be a lesson that I need to learn again and again and again. But hopefully for now it does stick, both with me making that short video on like the Audible thing, and also making working on that artificial intelligence video that is apparently growing longer and longer and longer. But maybe it just has to be this long because it is a complex subject. And if I want to talk about the history of it, the technology of it, the connections to our economy to politics to like ideology and to literature, and which is kind of the goal there. That does take time because these are very different, separate fields, and I need to make sure that like each of them is comprehensible. And some of you will go like, I don't need to listen to Raf explain how large language models work because I know that already. But maybe you don't know how a startup investment works, or maybe you have never read Nick Bostrom or any of the other people that are thinking about superintelligence and stuff like that. Maybe you don't have that part of it, and other people go like, well, I have read like Superintelligence and I know it's a shit book, but I have no idea how like large language models work. In fact, so maybe that part is interesting to you. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I sometimes need to step back and sort of like tease apart the different sort of like strands and ideas that all kind of muddle up in my brain. And maybe that's an ADHD problem. Maybe it's the result of years and years and years and years of reading relatively widely in different academic fields and so forth. But like a lot of times, I have like a rough idea in my head and go like, well, this is clearly the thesis. But I need to sort of like unbraid sort of like these different strands of ideas that all build this large thesis and make each of them explicit in its own right. And that's I feel with the artificial intelligence video, for example, it's very clearly the problem that I'm currently wrestling with. And hopefully that's sort of like stepping back and going like, no, I'll actually turn that video chapter into 2 chapters. Hopefully that sort of like makes it more, makes it easier for me to actually do that, because I've recorded that part before, and then I was looking at it and stuff I did about it, and we're like, well, no, this is messy. This doesn't work. It's not where it's supposed to be, and hopefully, sort of taking away that sort of like pressure in my own head does make it better, make it easier for me to actually go and record those parts, because that's the other thing, right? Like, when I'm still not fully convinced in my head that the argument makes fully sense in the end, then I'm really bad at like explaining it, and sort of like I first need to convince myself before I can try to convince you of something, and that's hopefully something that I have made progress on, and that's kind of why I'm trying to not promise like the artificial intelligence video this week. It'll be done when it's done, and I'll work on it over the week, and we'll see how long it takes. Possibly this week, possibly next week. We don't know yet. That's kind of where I'm at. 2 kind of minor things. I will try to do the official monthly live stream this Saturday. I'll hopefully set it up in the next couple of days if I remember. So you're welcome to hang out with me there. If you are a booktube person and you want to hang out on screen, you can always contact me. I'm really bad at, interacting with people on, say, Discord or whatever. I often, forget to reply or whatever, but I'm always willing to have guests on, especially, people that come from, like, different backgrounds than me and have, like, different reading habits and tastes and so forth, because I think that is more, can be very enlightening in a lot of ways, and I can learn something from you and so forth. So that is always an option. If you have, like, a bookish content creator that you want me to have on, you can always let me know down in the comments, and I'll try to initiate that. We will see. The other thing is, I've got one video age restricted, and it kind of made me very confused, because it happened after the night after the live stream at like 3 a.m. I got an email from YouTube that they had to age restrict the second part of my sort of like read through of Night of Knives, which is like 4 years old at this point. And I was like, the fuck happened there? Apparently it's because of like very explicit language. I have not rewatched that video. I have no idea what it means. I could probably contest it. On the other hand, I mean, it's a 4-year-old video, and I suspect everyone who is reading or watching my videos about Night of Knives is over 18 anyway, so I suspect it's not exactly a big deal, and the hassle with YouTube might not be worth it, but I just thought I'd bring it up because it's so weirdly funny. It's like, I've said things on here that might warrant like an 18 plus rating, possibly, but somehow it was not the second part of Night of Knives, of my Night of Knives discussion that I expected it to be, right? The fuck? But I guess that's also the result of, well, automated systems, as YouTube is calling it. I guess it's an algorithm. Who knows? That's sort of like an interesting week in that regard. I hope you had fun. If you watched any of the videos, thanks for watching. If you commented, thank you so very, very much. Comments are like the thing that for me is like tells me that I've done something right or wrong, no matter the comment. It feel like numbers like likes and views are interesting, but I feel like comments are sort of for me the thing that shows me that that something is working, that you are out there. So thank you very much if you have commented on any other things. I do very much appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out during the live streams. I hope you had a good week. I hope you do cool things this week. I hope you read good books, you listen to good music, you watch good movies, you do all the good things. And at the end of the day, stay good people, and I'll talk to you very soon. And until then, thanks and cheers.